All right. I think we can kind of jump right in. My name is Eleanor Stokes-List, and I'm an admission fellow here at Reed. Thank you all for being here today for our faculty office hours. Today, we are joined by a professor from the economics department, as well as an economics major currently in the department. So kind of the plan for the day will be they'll talk a little bit about their experiences in the department and do introductions and things like that. And then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. I ask that everyone stay muted and send their questions in the chat, and you're more than welcome to either send them publicly or to send them to myself, as I will be the moderator. But yeah, if I could hand it over to Denise, that would be wonderful.
So, hi, everybody. I'm Denise Hare. I'm a professor in the economics department. Currently, I'm chair, but that rotates. So I may not be chair next year, just in case you're looking to get a form signed. Those go through the chairs. But faculty are really approachable and generally available. So once you arrive on campus, if you have questions about economics, you can really reach out to anybody in the department. And even if you don't have an advisor in the department, we're always welcome to have you come by our office and tell you about the courses, tell you about the major, and just answer your questions and give you whatever guidance you're looking for. So maybe I'll see some of you next fall. I don't know. But let's see. I'm not supposed to launch yet, right? I'm just introduce myself. So maybe I'll hold on the rest of it and I'll just let Marlow introduce herself and then I'll be back.
Great.
Yeah, so my name is Marlow. I'm a sophomore quantitative economics major. So that is a kind of like the one specialty that economics majors have. Denise, correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, so there's two tracks, just a normal econ major and a quantitative economic major, which allows you to take a few more math classes to get that quantitative title. But yeah, I recently switched into the major after taking actually Denise's intro to econ class last semester, last fall. And yeah, I'm really enthusiastic to finally, know my major. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So if you two would share a little bit about an overview of the department and the major, that would be wonderful.
So I'll start. And Marlowe's experience is really representative of a lot of our students that they come to Reed. In the first year, they don't know what their major is going to be. So we don't have that many students coming in knowing they want to be an economics major. A lot of people take our intro course, which is where you typically start with our major, and it's a one-semester course. It moves pretty fast, and it's pitched a little bit above what a lot of schools offer at what they call a principles level. So we don't really teach principles of microeconomics, principles of macroeconomics. We kind of jump in slightly above that level. But if you haven't had any economics yet, that's perfectly fine. Most students are coming in and seeing economics for the first time in that course. So that's kind of the equalizing course where it gets everybody to the same point. And at the end of the semester, you're ready to take almost any other class that we offer. So we design it very deliberately to be flat in that way, so that once you're done with one semester, you have all the tools you need to kind of go off in whatever direction you want to go. And we offer a really wide variety of elective courses: international economics, development economics, industrial organization, that's like the study of firms and firm strategies. I teach a couple courses in the area of labor economics, which is focused more on people and their interactions with the economy around their jobs. Let me see what else. We have environmental economics. We have public finance. That's just kind of economics of the government, economics of the public sector. We have law and economics, natural resource economics, economic history. So we really do a pretty good job of covering a wide range of areas that economists work on and have things to say about. If you continue with our major, you'll also take more theory courses. So it's not just the applied electives that you would be taking, but There's a dedicated course to microeconomic theory, a dedicated course to macroeconomic theory, and then there's a course in econometrics, which is really just statistics. When economists do statistics, we call it econometrics. So it's when we measure things and use data to evaluate the hypotheses that come out of our theory. So the major as a whole is 10 units, and that includes 2 units of senior thesis. So over the first 3 years, you'd be aiming to get the other 8 courses in. Maybe you might have some electives left over for your senior year, but then in the senior year, you're doing a 2-unit thesis, fall and spring. And our theses also, our students work on a variety of different topics. This year, I'm advising 2 theses, and one of them is looking at how inequality affects people's decisions in the US to move from state to state. So whether people are driven into or out of a state by the level of inequality that exists in that state. And the other student is looking at housing affordability and specifically doing a case study of the city of Vancouver, BC, and trying to understand how policies there kind of so far have not really managed to bring the price of housing to any reasonable level. So kind of understanding what the optimal policy would be, and then how Vancouver so far really hasn't been able to achieve that. So those are both topics that the students came up with on their own, and they sounded interesting to me, so I agreed to sign on as their advisor. So a lot of the thesis topics that we get are student-driven. Sometimes we get students that are really wanting to work within our research area, but I would say the majority of the senior thesis topics are student-driven, where the student has an independent interest, and then an advisor is basically there to sort of help guide them through the process. I guess Marlow mentioned the different majors, and I should say something about that. We have kind of 3 different major tracks. There's just our kind of regular econ major is the one I described as being a full 10 units, including the 2 units of thesis. There's a quantitative track, which is what Marlow is on. And so that is the basic track that all the other majors are doing, plus it's an additional, I think it's 5 units from the math department. So it's 4 calculus courses, first and second year calculus, and then a probability and statistics course. So it's an additional 5 units from math.
We also have to take linear algebra and vector calc as well. So yeah, those 5. So it's 2 units of calculus.
Okay.
Yeah, but that linear algebra and vector calc are, I think, very, very helpful. This is what I've heard from John, which is one of our professors in the department. He says, and a lot of people say, that it's very helpful when students are thinking about grad school, the possibility of it, to take those courses.
Yeah.
But it's completely optional as well.
Yeah, so if you're thinking about doing graduate school in economics, a PhD in economics, we recommend you do the quantitative track. For anybody else, really, it doesn't matter. You know, it's just kind of a question of if you like math, you want to take more math anyway, it makes sense, but you don't have to. So there's those 2 tracks. And then there's a 3rd track that is kind of outside our department a little bit. It's the environmental studies major, which you can take with an economics concentration. And effectively, you're almost following exactly the same track that the regular econ majors would take, but you're doing extra work on the environmental studies side. So it's not quite, but very close to the same number of economics courses, and then additional courses from other departments that contribute to the environmental studies program. And then in that case, when you write your thesis, you're still writing it with an expected to do some kind of environmental studies topic for your thesis. So all of our students are in one of the majors. We also offer an econ minor. So if you're interested in have interdisciplinary kind of interests, our recommendation is you major and write whatever the other thing is, and then you can do an economics minor on top of that. The minor is only 5 courses. So you take intro, 2 of our 3 core courses, and then 2 electives. So it's a little bit lighter load, and there's no thesis involved in the minor. So I'm going to let you, Marla, fill in other little bits I may have left.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing about Reed and maybe liberal arts colleges in general is just the fact that a lot of people like myself come in pretty undecided. I actually came in to Reed interested in the physics department, which is it's very far from what I'm doing now. And that was only, in fall of 2023. And so a lot of things have changed just by taking, the first 7 classes that you take during your freshman year at Reed. Just by testing different things out, I found that um, I was very interested in math in high school and when I came in here, and physics to me just like was really what stuck with me throughout high school. But I also realized that I have a strong interest in the social sciences and policy as well and politics. And so I found that by taking intro to econ, which is kind of a requirement, you need to take 3. So we have 3 distinct groups here at Reed, group 1, group 2, and group 3. And you need to take classes from each group, and disciplines are specified within each group. And so group 1 is more leaning towards the arts, visual arts, performing arts, language arts. Group 2 is more of the social sciences, and then group 3 is the natural sciences. And so you need to take classes from each of those groups, and by doing so, you really get exposed um, to, yeah, just a lot of possibilities about what you can do with your future. And I found by taking, a required group 2 course with Denise that economics was kind of like the perfect intersection of my interests with math and also with, studying human beings, which is really interesting. Um, yeah, and I think that a lot of students, of course, come into Reed set on uh, one specific major, and that is, perfect and good for them. But a lot of other people are kind of undecided, and that's completely okay. Reed kind of offers you the ability to kind of find yourself within your first few years, which is really nice. Yeah. And then within the econ department specifically, yeah, Denise did a really great job of summing it up. After you take that one intro course, you really can take any other course. For instance, I took the intro class last fall, and now I'm in a 300 level elective with Denise, which is so interesting. And I'm really enjoying. And so, yeah, that's essentially all I can think of.
Great. Thank you both for sharing that. We have some time for Q&A as well. So if y'all would like to send your questions in the chat, that would be great. You can either send them to everyone or just to me. Either way is totally fine, but I'll give you all a moment to kind of submit your questions and I'll read them out. Alrighty. All right, so we'll start off with great questions. So, what years are internship or experience opportunities available to students in the economics department?
I think they're available in all the years. We definitely have students after the first year who are applying for various opportunities and getting funded for different things. And that continues all the way through. And some of our opportunities even extend for the summer after you graduate. Those tend to be a little bit more restricted because oftentimes we're trying to save things for students while they're still here at Reed and can share the benefits with those with students, in the subsequent year. But under certain circumstances, graduating seniors are eligible for some things, and there are a few things that are actually targeted specifically at graduating seniors. So really, any summer subsequent to a year at Reed is fair game. And there's really by now such a wide variety of things. The one that comes to mind most immediately for me is that we have students who work directly for us, faculty, on our research projects during the summer. So each faculty member is looking for one or two students usually to work with them. So that's one opportunity. Oftentimes for those positions, we're looking at students that are just a little bit more advanced enough to have had some statistics, because most of us are going to be working with data in some way. And so we want students that have some coding and statistical tools. So that may mean that it's students who have taken particular courses and maybe have advanced into their second or third year before they have all the skills that we need. But there's still a lot of other things that involve students going off campus. So working with a professor, you're pretty much just staying on campus and working here in Portland. But there's a lot of off-campus stuff where we fund students to work in nonprofit kinds of organizations where they may not have the money to pay you. And so if they can carve out kind of a position for you, something that they have for you to do that's productive and is going to offer a little bit of learning opportunity. Reed has quite a wide variety of funds now in various kind of little pockets that fund those kinds of things. We fund students who are working in government kinds of positions, so local government, state government, national, federal governments, even overseas kinds of opportunities. So that's another thing. So basically, if you're able to sort of locate some sort of project where you're involved within an organization that will benefit from your work, and you can make a case that you'll benefit from doing the work, there's quite a lot of funding now at Reed that's designed to try and make that possible. So it wouldn't necessarily mean that you're making a lot of money at the end of the summer, but it's certainly designed to cover your expenses for doing something like that. We also have money for students to do independent research projects. So if you've got a research idea that's not connected to working with a specific professor, but something that you want to get out in the field and do it on your own, there's money for those kinds of experiences as well. So really just a wide variety of things. In economics, we have dedicated money for students who are doing an economics internship. So if it has a really clear economics focus, and I think the requirement is that you've taken at least 2 or 3 courses in our department, you don't even have to be a major. But you can apply for something like that. So we have a long list under the fellowships and awards category on our website that lists all the different summer applications that are out there. And the idea is you come up with a project idea and don't just submit to one thing, right? You try and get as much mileage as you can out of that proposal and submit to a variety of different competitions. And there's a good chance that something is going to come along that can fund you if you can make it general enough in that way.
That's great. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Would you mind giving us a few examples of some of the research that students are doing with current professors in the economics department, as well as maybe some examples of independent research economics majors are pursuing?
Yeah, I can say, well, within our department, we have a pretty large department at this point. We're 8 full-time faculty positions, and we've just hired our 8th person who's going to join us in the fall. So he's not quite here yet. But among us, when I was listing the electives before, right, that kind of gives you an idea of the areas that people are working in. And then, within those areas, people are hiring students to do specific kind of tasks for them. It may involve collecting and putting together a data set. I often hire students to do the actual statistical work with me, like I'm helping them with the coding. A lot of it is computer related. A lot of it is going to involve work that you're doing on a computer screen because it's going to often involve manipulation of data. So you're either preparing, kind of putting a data set together in order to be analyzed, or once the data set has been established, you're sort of working with those data, identifying what are the most valid observations, a process we call cleaning the data, which is kind of a funny phrase. because it doesn't involve any kind of water or soap at all, right? Because that would destroy your computer, right? But we're essentially trying to figure out, within a data set, which observations are the valid ones, and do you have miscodes in there? Do you have data entry errors? Or do you have individuals that maybe misunderstood the question and, answered a different question, but yet their answer got coded? So you're looking for what are effectively, we sometimes call them the outliers, right? And so that can be you can spend a whole summer, right? Just getting a data set ready to be analyzed before you actually start the analysis. And then there's the analysis itself, where you're doing things like multivariate regression and doing some descriptive statistics. And then once you have the main results, it's a lot of work just to kind of put the tables together and get them ready for publication. So that's another step. So it's all pretty labor intensive. And so it's really helpful to have students to help us with that, because we pretty much, our research time is confined to the summers. We spend a lot of time on teaching during the school year. And so we're trying to get a lot of work done during the summer. So having student labor, really available to work with us, right? It can be a pretty intense experience, but it's fun because you can get a lot done during the summer when you have a good team of students working with you. So, that doesn't describe every single student experience, but I would say a lot of it is working at a computer screen and working with data in some way or another. Students who are doing research on their own, that can be a little bit different, because that's going to involve a much freer form of what the research looks like. A lot of students are doing kind of interview projects. So I know a student was applying, I wrote a letter of recommendation for him, and he was applying to understand the experience of the elderly in Portland. And so his goal was to essentially get to know elderly communities within Portland and kind of look across a range of different ethnicities and populations, and just kind of he was really big into videotaping. And so wanting to sort of archive people's stories and getting to know elderly experiences, and then creating kind of a narrative of that took into account how those experiences could vary by ethnicity and community. So that's a very different kind of project, right? He wasn't just sitting in front of a computer screen all summer manipulating data. He was out in the field talking to people and really creating this video record of the conversations that he had. So, that's just to kind of show you that there's a variety of different experiences that we can fund here. And a lot of it is driven by your interest in the kinds of things that you'd like to do. So it's really wide open.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thanks for sharing that. All right, we have another question. This might be a great question for both of you. How would you describe the community of students within the economics department? Are there department-specific events? How do students interact with each other? How would you kind of describe that relationship?
You want to go first, Marla?
Yeah, sure. So I joined the department relatively recently, as I said, and so I my experience is relatively limited, but overall I'd say, and I think this is pretty across the board for Reed, is that Reed is just like a pretty communal place. And so a lot of students are just going to and do seek out to learn together. And that's just really awesome. When we have problem sets or essays, we do them together and we edit each other's papers and stuff like that. And I think that is an experience that is just really common here at Reed. There are within department events. Again, my experience here is kind of limited, but that is also kind of across the board with majors here. But yeah, I just think that this goes for both faculty and students that, if you're struggling, there's help available from both faculty, kind of regardless of if they're the professor that's teaching your course or not. A lot of the faculty are just like leaving their doors open, willing to help you. for instance, in the beginning of the semester, um, when class registration is happening, it's kind of a stressful time to figure out, um, if you're meeting your requirements and getting enough credits and stuff like that, and planning out your schedule. And my advisor wasn't available on a given day, and so I went and talked to a different economics faculty member that I had never talked to before, and now we're very friendly with each other. And so those sort of relationships, just kind of like random interactions that turn into friendships and having colleagues, for lack of a better word, here at Reed. It's really nice. It's just, I describe it as very communal.
Yeah, I like that you use the word colleague because I think we like to describe it that way, that we have this collegial relationship with our students. And I definitely feel that way when I work with students over the summer, right? That we're sharing ideas about the research and, we all get really excited about it. And it really is like having a colleague that is working on your project. And I also feel like we get that a little bit in our upper level courses in teaching too, that, when you encounter an article together and then come together to talk about it, that has a really collegial feel to it as well. But the question is about like, how do we sort of, get together? And I would say in our department, a lot of it is around speaker events. And so we find ourselves hosting a lot of speakers in any given semester. There's 2 or 3 at least. Every few weeks, there's something. And so, if you're interested in the topic that speaker is talking on, then following that, there's usually a reception or some kind of gathering. So that's a lot of the place where we sort of see students outside of classes in those kinds of events. There's always a big softball tournament at the end of the year, and I know that's coming up. And so I know some students are organizing the econ department softball team. And it's very informal and inclusive, so you don't have to be good at it in order, anybody can play, right? So everybody is welcome to join that, and they usually get special t-shirts and they come up with the team name and so on. So that's kind of a fun thing. As a division, we have a picnic in the fall. So that's the social sciences as a whole, have a fall gathering to kind of welcome everybody back with a big picnic. And hopefully it doesn't rain, but if it rains, then I guess it's not a picnic because we have to move indoors. But it's that kind of an event. It's an outdoor evening barbecue kind of event. Trying to think of other things. One of my colleagues, Noelle Nedisel, sometimes will organize student hikes. And so she will advertise those that, anybody on our econ mailing list wants to go for a hike. She'll go out someplace nearby the city, provide transportation so you can get out for a little bit. I know there've been some bowling trips along the same lines. So it's kind of a little bit random and occasional, but if you want to get on our mailing list when you arrive, there's an economics department mailing list, and that's where all those kinds of things are announced.
That sounds so fun. Could you maybe speak to maybe economics majors who are interested in kind of pursuing the pre-law track? Do you think that the econ department does a good job of preparing students to prepare for the LSAT and kind of navigating that trajectory? How do you think the econ program and pre-law kind of interact with each other?
Over the years, we've had quite a number of students go to law school, and my sense is that they've been pretty competitive and really been happy with the set of admissions, when they apply to a range of schools, typically seeing them getting into their top choice schools. Depending on what their interests are, they may be going in different directions, but we seem to be pretty successful with law school admissions, so that tells me that we must be doing something right. There's no deliberate attempt to like structure the curriculum in that way, right? It's like, I don't remember ever when we're talking about our courses that people said, oh, but we need to do this because it prepares students for law school, right? We're not deliberately trying to set that up as one of our goals, but I do think that an economics major is a really good background, a really good preparation for law. Part of it, I think, is just the way that you're trained to think that in economics, we kind of have a uniform paradigm, and everybody has to understand that paradigm. You don't have to agree with it, but you have to understand it. So we're training you to think in a very structured and specific way. where the idea is that we're standardizing your thought process so that, it's almost like any economist would look at a problem and come up with the same answer, right? That's kind of the goal in terms of the education. Now, it doesn't mean you necessarily have to buy into that and believe it, but you at least have to understand how an economics perspective is going to get you from point A to point B. And I think law school is very similar. I think it's also about this idea of imparting to you this very, very structured way of thinking, such that any lawyer, right, would give you the same answer to the question. That's kind of, what they're testing you on. Do you understand the legal framework and the legal way of deriving answers? And so I think going through that in economics is going to prepare you for that similar kind of training that you would get in law school. Yeah, and so I would say my own anecdotal experience is that our students have been successful, and it makes sense to me that economics would be a good major to prepare you for law school. It's not something that we train people, we don't necessarily every year have somebody going to law school, but we've definitely had a wide number of them over the years. And so there's enough alum out there, right? There's enough econ major lawyers, right, that you would have people to kind of reach out to and get advice from.
Awesome. Would you share with us kind of how the conference style of learning at Reed kind of fits into the economics department?
Marlo, would you want to start on that one? Because you've seen how conference works in other departments too, and I'm curious how economics compares to how it works in some other disciplines.
Yeah. So I think it really depends on the econ class, first of all. A lot of the econ classes are just going to be lectures, just like kind of how a lot of the math classes are going to be lectures. I've taken 4 out of the 5. I've taken up to linear algebra. I just need to take the vector requirement. And then I've also taken intro econ, as I've said, and then I'm in econometrics right now, which, as Denise said, is like the statistics of econ. And those classes are all just kind of simply lecture, although they are, like all Reed classes, very small. And so even though it is a lecture, I assume it doesn't feel like how lectures feel at big state schools. When you have a question, it's very easy and encouraged to ask questions and to express your confusion and to even make comments sometimes in lecture. But other than that, there are just, I think, a good amount of the elective courses within the department are conference style based. And so the elective that I'm in right now is called the Economy of Population, Gender, and Race. And I'm taking that with Denise. And we actually had it this morning at 9 a.m. And yeah, there are lecture components to that class because, in economics, we're modeling so much and using formulas and stuff like that. That's just kind of a requirement of the major. But there is just a lot to talk about besides the modeling. The applications of the modeling are really important. And I think really how you get into that analysis of the models and like the real findings, which really preps you for research, I think, too. Just drawing conclusions and stuff like that. So the elective that I'm in right now is really mostly conference, and we're just trying to work through the problems and the puzzles and discuss the findings of the articles that we're reading.
Yeah, I think that was really nice, probably better than I can do. But I would just say in economics, it's really a continuum. And some classes are pretty heavily lecture, and others are more conference discussion oriented. But I think there's always going to be some lecture component because there's not a single class out there where there isn't some technical information that the instructor is going to need to do some explanation at the board, right? And then it starts to have more of a lecture feel, but that doesn't necessarily mean the whole class is like that. But your first class, intro econ, there is going to be a lot of lecture there because there's just a lot of material that just has to be conveyed to students. You're learning all kinds of definitions and analytical frameworks and equations and so on. So you start out with pretty lecture heavy, but then as you move through the major, there's more opportunities for open-ended discussion and conference style.
Cool. Awesome. What would you describe as, or what's different about studying econ here at Reed versus maybe another institution from your perspective?
So I can say something about our intentions, right? And sort of what we're trying to do with the major here. We definitely try to get you really quickly into the heart of the material, the interesting part. And so our introductory course is really super fast paced. We cover a lot of ground in a single semester because we want you to be able to get to the more fun stuff quickly. A lot of schools would do like a semester of macroeconomics, a semester of microeconomics, right, before you're really allowed to do the real serious stuff. So we think we get you to the stuff that suits your interests as fast as we possibly can. That does put some limitations on our introductory class in the sense that I think it does feel more lecture oriented because we're trying to cover so much. So we don't always stop and talk about things so much in that class. But I always try and tell students, well, here's the class that you should take if you really want to talk about this topic at more length, right? So this is the next course that you should sign up for. So you'll be able to explore that more fully. So that's one aspect, sort of how you come into the major. I do think we try to pitch our courses for majors, theory courses, macro or micro especially, at a slightly higher level. So you're getting more math and more calculus in those courses than you might get at the counterparts at other schools. So it's possible to do our major without going really heavy into the math department, but you're definitely going to get some exposure to math within the major as well. The micro theory course requires calculus, so there is some usage of calculus, even if you're not on the quantitative track. What else distinguishes us? Because you write a thesis, right? And so every student has that experience of picking a topic that's of interest to themselves and exploring it. Um, Economics by nature is really policy oriented, and I think that definitely characterizes our faculty. We don't have anybody on our faculty that identifies as a theorist, as far as I know. Everybody is working on some kind of question that has some policy angle. So we have our feet in the real world. We're very applied in that way. Um, so that characterizes us. Um, I don't know. I can't think of anything else right now.
Great. Awesome. Does anyone else have any other questions that they haven't sent in the chat that they'd like to maybe ask before things kind of wind down? I'll give you guys a few minutes if you do have any other questions that remain. Um, I'll give you guys a few seconds. I know I'm a really slow typer. All righty. Well, maybe. Oh, all right. Just kidding. One more question. That's a great question. So, is it advised to double major in econ with political science or philosophy? A student is wondering about double majoring.
Probably at Reed, a double major is typically not something we would recommend because you have to write a thesis. And so there's no way to major in something that doesn't involve writing a thesis. And so if you double majored, it would mean two theses. And I have seen students do that, like writing a thesis in the junior year in one department and then senior year in another department. I wouldn't recommend that strategy. It's great to do a thesis once. There's a lot to be gained from that because you learn like how to frame a question, how to pick a topic in the first place, right? And then what does it mean to frame a question around your topic? And then what are the resources you want to use to gather information that helps you answer the question, right? And then answering it. and then describing the process that you went through, right? Each of those steps is a really, really good learning exercise. But once you've done it once, I'm not sure how much value there is in doing it again. Even if it means doing it again in a different major or different department, there's still some element of commonality there that you might be better served by just taking different courses, right? Because when you take thesis, you're registering for thesis as a course. So it kind of displaces two courses that you would take otherwise. And if you write two theses, then it displaces four courses, right? And that's like a full semester. So in terms of the value of your time, it's not clear that the second thesis is going to give you all that much more knowledge, right? Relative to what you got from the first one. So for that reason, you don't see that many double majors at Reed. It doesn't lend itself all that well. Sometimes people will sort of blend different departments into a single interdisciplinary major. And there's some opportunity for that. We haven't encouraged that so much in economics because now that we have a minor, we just recommend that you minor in economics and then major in this other thing that you really like, right? And then you kind of have the best of both worlds because you're writing a single thesis, but you're getting a really relatively deep exposure to two different departments. And it really fits well within the sort of the curriculum that Reed has. Do have these what we call standing interdisciplinary majors. So that's what environmental studies is. That's a major that's designed for people who want to take a multidisciplinary approach to studying the environment. And there's a set curriculum for that. And so the courses are kind of laid out. And as I said, it's almost the same as doing a full economics major, but then you're taking these additional courses. Marlow was telling you about group requirements. So you're essentially fulfilling your group requirements by taking environmental courses in the natural sciences. And you're fulfilling your group requirements in group one. So you're taking, literature and arts courses that relate to the environment. So you're structuring those additional courses that you might be taking around that common interest. There are other standing interdisciplinary majors at Reed that economics is not a part of, but there's a comparative race and ethnic studies major. There's now sort of multimedia opportunities to study film. There's comparative literature. Uh, can you think of anything else, Marlow?
Not that I can think of. For this specific question, I'm in this international relations class right now with Alex Montgomery, who's a poli-sci professor. And he just introduced this new public policy major, which I think you can probably do interdisciplinary like you can with poli-sci with econ. And so that might be a great option. That's like very specific and a brand new major. But yeah, essentially every single person that I've talked to, alum or upperclassman that is doing a double major, just really recommends against it because of the double thesising. Yeah, but yeah, interdisciplinary majors are an option here.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. There is this new public policy major, and there's also an international affairs major. And we don't have that, how to explain this. Economics is not a home department in either one of those majors, but doing those majors could involve economics courses. So you'd still be working with your main department being something like political science or history, but there's room in there to include economics courses that would contribute towards that major. So yeah, that's a really good point, Marlo. That's an option. And that's a brand new major that will be starting next year. So
All right. This might be a question better geared towards Marlowe. Marlowe, how would you describe the course load and the workload as an econ major? Do you feel like you have a good work-life balance? Are you able to participate in other things? How would you speak to that?
Yeah, so I think that regardless of the major here at Reed, you should be ready for a rigorous education. It's definitely a heavy course load. Um, just like really upfront about that. With that being said, STEM majors definitely it seems like with my experience. Like I have a few friends in the chem department, and just natural sciences in general because they have labs with their classes on top of, lectures and normal coursework. They tend to probably have the highest course load. Um, but yeah, I think that now that I'm in my second year and I've figured out my major, I feel like I um, have been able to find a work-life balance. It is kind of tough your freshman year, getting adjusted to read, because it is just yeah, a lot of work. They assign a lot of work here, but that's kind of part of the charm, is the fact that you are learning a lot and you're being challenged in a way that's very exciting. And yeah, your academic curiosity is just like really expanding by the rigorous education. Yeah, I'd say that once you find your balance here at Reed, um, you can definitely have a healthy work-life balance, especially in the econ department. I think I'm finally finding that, which is nice.
Awesome.
I
Great.
can I add on to that, Eleanor?
Yes, please.
I think this ties back to the sort of the collegial element of it, in that the way that we construct the courses, we're like going so much more beyond just the standard kind of textbook treatment. So, like this morning, this elective that Marlowe's in, we finished the textbook this morning. I forgot to point that out to you guys, but we did the last chapter that we're going to do in this textbook, and we still have 5 weeks to go. And so that means we're filling the rest of the semester with published work that really represents kind of the cutting edge research. So, we've finished kind of the textbook treatment, and now and we've been reading articles all along, right? But for the rest of the semester, we're only going to be reading articles. And so, of course, that's hard, right? For undergraduates, you're reading the work that the professors are writing in dialogue with each other. These are articles that are really aimed at a professional economics audience, and you're reading them as an undergraduate student. So the level is that we pitch to you is really pretty high, but we're also giving you a lot of scaffolding, right, to be able to work with that. So it's not like you're jumping into graduate school, right? But if you look at the reading list, you're definitely reading some of the same pieces that people in graduate school would be reading. But, we're going to be feeding them to you more carefully, right? We're sort of, I write up reading guides for all the articles and say, well, here's the part I really need you to read. And then here's this other part, right? That we're going to just skip that. So don't get lost in that part. So we give you a lot of scaffolding to sort of help you achieve what we want, but we are really treating you in a very professional way, right? We're really going to thoroughly understand the material and not just stop with the sort of standard textbook treatment. And I think that also gets to that question about like how Reed is different. I think we really stand out in that way, even among other kind of liberal arts colleges that are kind of like us. I think our syllabi are still deeper and kind of more intensive than what you would often get in other similar programs.
Okay, great. Thank you both for sharing that. I think we have time for one last question. What is your favorite part about Reed?
I can go first, Denise. I'd say the community here is just really, really special, and not something that you're gonna find at another random school, by any means. The students here just are very dependent on each other in like a good way, if that makes sense. You're all going through the same experience, and you're doing so collaboratively. And it is a small school, but it's one of like the really great things is once you form relationships with people, those people are going to be around you for a few years, and you can really get to know them and really be productive with them academically, and also really form really great friendships, and networks professionally, speaking. And then in regard to faculty, it's the same sort of thing. Reed faculty really care about their students, and it shows by their availability and how you know, like Denise was kind of saying, we're kind of treated like equals, which kind of feels ridiculous because these professors are doctorates of their discipline and, like very, very knowledgeable people. And I graduated high school 2 years ago, and so to be treated like that is it's a gift that I don't think you're gonna find anywhere else. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, the answer is really easy because when we're out recruiting faculty to come here, trying to hire and, like I said, we just hired somebody to join us in the fall. We're always advertising the job as you get to teach like the best students, right? The students make teaching here so much fun. And so when we do the process of bringing them to campus and, listening to their research and having them, meet a lot of different people, we always include students in that because our students are really our selling point, right? That's really what actually makes the faculty want to come here is they're like, wow, these are the best students I've ever met, because the students are so genuinely interested and curious and really wanting to engage. And so really, I think uniformly, when you ask Reed faculty, like what keeps you here? What do you really like about this place? They always say, oh, it's the students. The students are so great. So, you guys really, you're a self-selected group, right? And choosing to come here, it's because you want a certain kind of educational experience that makes it really rewarding then for us as faculty to have the opportunity to teach you guys.
Oh, that's wonderful. I definitely will echo that. I think, the students are the best part of working here at Reed. But thank you both, Denise and Marlowe, for your time and answering all of these questions. And thank you to all of the students here today for taking the time to join us. I will just remind you all that we have lots of other events coming up. We have virtual faculty office hours with lots of other departments coming up. We also have lots of other panels and things, as well as in-person events. So definitely come on down and join us for other virtual events. But thank you all for being here today. If you do have any other questions for either the admissions office or for current students, definitely don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can reach us through admission@reed.edu. And if you'd like to contact a current student, you can reach them at writeareedy@reed.edu. All of this is available on our website as well. But thank you all for your time today. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And thank you all very much.